Today, I am lovingly and respectfully calling out the unreasonable practices that I am seeing way too often at very reputable, famous fertility IVF clinics. These practices are costing the patient time, money, energy, sanity, and of course, their egg reserve before creating the family of their dreams. From $27,000 embryo transfers to cookie cutter protocols, which you know I talk so much about, to kind of the whole like, hey, we don't know what's happening, but just pay me 27 grand again and, we'll try again. Okay, I'm going to break down what's really happening behind the scenes and asking one question. There's just one question that I want to put in your head that you ask yourself every time somebody makes a suggestion that makes you go, and it's just this: is that reasonable? All right, let's get into it. So what made me want to do this episode, so many examples, but two are coming to my head right away. One is I have a former client, let's call her client A, who wants to give her extra embryos to another one of my clients. Let's call her client B. Donate her embryos. No money involved. It costs money, but no money involved. Just pure generosity. Incredible, right? The woman handing over her embryos is just trying to give the other woman a shot at motherhood. It's a purely selfish act of love. This is not business. This is just beautiful humanity. The clinic holding those embryos quoted $27,000 for client B to do a transfer. $27,000. When she called me up crying, I said, there's no way that's right. There's just no way that's right. That has to be a mistake. I go, can you get me the quote? And she did, and I saw the breakdown. And there was a $12,000 fee for an embryo adoption. What does that mean? That means that they're charging $12,000 to just release the embryo from client A to client B. Client A paid $25,000 to make this embryo. So just to release it, please trust me, I had her go back multiple times. I'm like, there has to be something more. There has to be something more. Nope. This is not a reasonable fee. This is ransom. And it gets worse. When client B then tried to move that embryo to another clinic that was willing to do the transfer for a typical transfer fee, the original clinic refused to release the embryo, sign off on it. They would only sign off on the egg. What is happening here? They would only sign off on the egg. There are no eggs, there's embryos. Well, they would only sign off on the egg. I know, it doesn't even make sense, but this is my point. These practices are happening. We're not talking about it until now, and it's not reasonable. And we need to collectively start saying no. Explain this in clear English instead of it's a release fee. No. What costs $12,000 to release an embryo? What are you doing? Tell me the details. I need details before I'm about to hand over $12,000. And just this morning, I was talking to another former client. She called me up saying she is thinking about testing her remaining 4 embryos. And she just wanted my opinion. What I do is I go over every case scenario. I give her ideas that maybe she hasn't thought about before because I know why she wants to test the embryos, all that. And here is the crazy part. She said, well, the testing is going to be $7,400. And I was like, yeah, that's transfers. They're about $5,000. That seems like, she goes, no. The transfer is another $6,000 to $8,000. The testing of the embryos will be $7,400 for 4 embryos. That's not reasonable. This is the same clinic that I paid $2,000 for testing up to 8 embryos just 10 years ago with Mila. Of course, 10 years ago, I know a lot about this clinic, and there weren't the private investors that are kind of obviously now seemingly more important than the patients. But here's where it also gets laughable, but it's not, because it's so heartbreaking. The same client was telling me, she goes, well, because we were just like, what with this pricing? She's like, I know. She goes, it's going to cost me 20 grand to transfer embryos that are already made. Like, what is happening? And she goes, well, back when I did the egg retrieval, so this is probably, 3-4 years ago, she said, I paid for testing, but then even before we started, I decided not to test. And so they refunded me for the testing. Yeah, okay. She goes, but then they charged me because the cost of not testing meant she wasn't eligible for this bundle that included testing. So because she was not testing, she paid more to do less. Like, this sounds made up, but it's not. And let me tell you, this clinic is the gold standard it was the gold standard in my eyes. But, and when I started my consulting in 2016, I would recommend them all the time. I believed in them. And then I started seeing what I was shocked, but I started seeing what I see now, which is a well-oiled profit-first practice running on fears and fees. This isn't just this clinic, but, and I just did that podcast on could genetic testing be costing you a child? Definitely check that out. But you're often told if you don't test, you're basically going to have a baby with 3 heads. You're going to waste, 6 to 9 to 12 months recovering from a failed transfer, a horrible pregnancy loss with this abnormal embryo. So of course, people are like, oh my gosh, yes, I must do this testing. Who wouldn't? That kind of fear makes a $8,000 transfer fee feel like a bargain. But here's the truth, and I know I went into this in the other podcast, so listen to that. But again, if you could get pregnant naturally, you would. It's the same egg and sperm. Genetic abnormalities happen. The one we're all so afraid of, the one that actually results in a live birth, happens 0.1% of the time across the world. I checked every country. So we need to take the blinders off. When the numbers and the logic don't add up, we have to stop being passive and start asking, is this reasonable? And no, you don't have to go with the big name. Trust me, it's the clinics and it's even the doctors. I hear about their podcasts that get all the praise and get all the press. I am telling you, when I need to trust in a doctor because I have a client with a certain need, certain protocol, and I know this doctor can do it, I am not recommending who you are listening to or who you have been told is the best clinic in the country. Trust me, because most of the clinics and doctors that I'm recommending, and again, it's very based on the client I'm working with, they have never heard of them before. So I will say this plainly. The famous doctor that worked with the famous client or with the famous name or who has the famous podcast, I'm not recommending them. I know too much. I've heard too many stories doing this now since 2016. I've spoken to many of their former employees. The shine has worn off. What is underneath is profit-first practices, and I can never recommend that for my clients. So this podcast is dedicated to so many of the unreasonable practices that I've seen over the years. I'm tired of it. I'm sick of it. You deserve to know that it has to be the IVF patient who is paying, everything, the costs are all on you. The risks are all on you. And this has been an unfair advantage the entire life of IVF. And so the more that you know, the more that you can hopefully do what I didn't do, was take the blinders off, see this for what it is, total profit-driven practices, totally unreasonable, and say no. Don't be afraid to say no. Again, they need you so much more than you need them. So when you are listening to these practices and these things, I want you to think about Hamilton. I want you to think about that scene back when Jefferson is going through all of his logical arguments, about why they should support France. I think that was the scene. And Hamilton just calmly, but not, sits and listens calmly and then fires back, "You must be out of your goddamn mind." And that's exactly how I feel about these profit-first practices at the IVF clinics that I want to teach you. So anytime you're hearing that, I want you to think about that Hamilton quote, all right? Because here's the thing, I work with brilliant, driven, wildly capable, and successful women. And yet, when we talk about IVF, their common sense seems to leave the building. And I am not judging, because that was 100% me too. I did 9 egg retrievals and 10 transfers. I kept going because I thought that if I just kept on paying and trying and go and keep doing, I could win. And that's what makes this so dangerous. We want to believe that we can win at this if we just give it another shot. And if we just follow the steps, the baby will come. But IVF isn't a vending machine. It's not insert money and get results. So now when I work with clients, I ask them to start with, and they tell me what they heard. I'm going to go through the list of some things that they've heard and the reasoning behind it, the unreasonableness of them and the reasoning behind it. I ask them to answer, is that reasonable? And oftentimes they think about it and they say no. And that one question opens up our entire conversation. So let's talk through some real world examples of things that I've heard brilliant, kind, well-trained doctors say, and my brilliant, kind, successful clients accept. Well, until they talk to me. And you tell me, is this reasonable or not? Okay, let's start with your periods are irregular and painful and heavy. That's fine. It's absolutely reasonable for a doctor to not immediately know the cause of your cycle issues. It is not reasonable for them to dismiss them like they don't matter. Okay, one woman I worked with had irregular cycles her whole life. Sometimes they came, sometimes they didn't. Her doctor just said it was fine. You just need to be on birth control. She pushed. She said, she did that. And then when she wanted to have a baby, she pushed to say, I've never had regular cycles. Oh, it's fine. You just get off the birth control. And she's like, can you get labs done? No, you don't need them. She pushed and pushed and pushed. It turns out her FSH was 7 times higher than the normal, and her AMH was like nothing. Okay, and she was not. That did not correlate with her age. Suddenly, the same doctor was like, oh, it's fine. You just do IVF. I'm like, no. It's not fine. Nothing about this is fine. We need to know why your FSH is so high and your AMH is so low, and you have irregular periods, and you have all these other things you've talked about before we dare invest in IVF. That's like hearing your car make noise and the mechanic being like, oh no, just turn up the radio. He won't hear it. And then when the engine blows, they're like, oh, well, you just need a new car. It's fine. It's not fine. We need to fix the problem, not the symptom. Okay, another one is you don't need a new protocol. You just need better eggs. This is the classic, blame the body, blame the age, not the plan. But here's the thing. If something is not working, it is reasonable to try a different approach. There are dozens of combinations that I discuss with my clients for them to discuss with the doctor to see what they are and aren't willing to do. But why would you accept, why isn't it reasonable for us to accept, I did the same thing, that just because one isn't working, nothing will work just because we're older. And here's the thing. When I started IVF, I was 33 years old. Of course, no one mentioned egg quality at the time, but it didn't work. And nobody had any answers why. And then all of a sudden, I'm now 38 doing IVF. And now it must be that I'm old. And it's like, okay, please. All of a sudden, now it's an age issue. And here's the kicker. On my 9th egg retrieval, 10th transfer, that's when I finally tested for the first time ever, tested my embryos. And there were always 2, and they both came back normal. So is it possible that at my oldest age was the first time I had genetically healthy embryos, except for my son, which was round 2? Yeah. Is it likely? No. Right? So it's not reasonable to go through round after round of IVF with no changes just because you're older. Again, always smart changes to make. And if your doctor isn't suggesting them, it might be time to find one that can, as long as the new doctor has changes specific to your biology that they know have worked over and over again. Because that's the only advice I give to my clients. I have seen it work with this specific case over and over and over and over and over again. All right, another one that just is not reasonable is you're old, so we've got to do as much IVF as possible as soon as possible. Don't wait. Don't pass it. Go directly to jail. Don't pass go. No. This is a fear tactic, and it's not reasonable. Okay, your body might need recover time, and that's okay. You're not going to lose your entire egg reserve because you waited a month or 2, right? Or even 3 for the most part. It's like you're running and you're like, okay, I got to catch my breath. No, you're too old to catch your breath. You got to keep running. Well, I'm not going to be successful running if I can't catch it. No, you're just old. No, that's not reasonable. Okay, so when you feel, because I have my clients come to me and they're like, I not feel ready. How do I know? What I ask them is, you said you don't feel ready. Talk to me about that, and then just to prove to them whether they're ready or not, then we look at the data. Just to be clear, I always have them look at the data to see, is your AMH, FSH, follicle count, menstrual cycle all as good, as it was with the last round of IVF. So by the way, that's a little hint on how you can know if you really are ready. How do you feel and what does the data say? But the whole idea of you're too old to wait, that is a fear tactic. That's not true. And that could get you into a lot of extra rounds of IVF that are not going to work well for you. This one I get when I'm helping somebody through their egg retrieval. My clients text me their monitoring reports, right? This is the follicle count, sizes, estrogen level, any other hormone levels. These are the next instructions. And when my client is nearing the trigger shot and I'm telling them I just texted somebody, you're going to probably trigger in 2 to 3 days. You must go back tomorrow. Keep me posted. Okay. When we are coming towards the trigger shot and my client says to me, and I'm like, okay, today's the day. Most of you got 6 beautiful follicles between 16 and 19. Here you are. And when they come back to me and say that the doctor wants to delay the trigger to wait for the smaller follicles to catch up, I die. I actually just die. The smaller follicles are never going to catch up. The smaller follicles are like going to catch up in like 2 or 3 days. So you're going to sacrifice all of those beautiful alphas for betas that are never going to catch up. The one that really kills me is when it's like, okay, if the doctor wants to wait for those betas to catch up, that's going to be another 2 to 3 days on stim drugs, right? I would trigger today for the alphas, 2 to 3 days on stim drugs. And then the doctor triggers in like a day. So they've lost the big ones. The small ones are too small. And guess what the results are? Okay, this typically happens if I'm working with someone in the middle of a cycle. So we have not had these conversations with the doctor beforehand, because this is what I do with my clients. I have them write out questions for their doctor beforehand, and I get clarity on how many days on stim drugs is ideal, right? They always kind of scoot around the question, what's ideal? What is the size of the follicle you like to see of the trigger shot? These are all key things to discuss with the doctor beforehand, because when we're in this mess of you're ready to trigger today, they want to wait for the small follicles. Ooh, and then, let's just shift it a day. So these are the small follicles are still too small, and now the big follicles are too big. Dead. All right, you've definitely heard me talk about this one, but this is typically with a new client. So then for the next round, because I had a low egg reserve, they upped the doses of the medication, and I was taking like 600 units. 300 have gone left, 300 Menopur. Low egg reserve means your ovaries are beautifully sensitive. More medication is like more noise, and it's very, very annoying to your follicles. And all you need to do is give them some love, not too little, but definitely not too much. And you can watch them like accept it and grow beautifully. If you only have, if you have less than 6 follicles, let's say total, you don't need to blast them with medication. Typically, you don't ever need to blast them with medication, but definitely if you have a lower follicle count, no higher meds. It's like over fertilizing plants. They're going to grow, or they're not going to grow. And by the way, they're going to like start to die because they're like, this is too much, right? Or like over watering your flowers. They're going to just drown. Their roots are going to die. And it's like, no, this is good. This is good water for you. You like this? No, too much. Okay. So anytime you hear, because of your low egg reserve, we want to give you max doses, run. Okay. Here's another one that is not reasonable to me, though science does not back me up. All right. I give a lot of clinical evidence. I work with women around the world, like 16 countries, I don't even know. And I've seen thousands of case studies. So for me, a lot of the things that I believe and know is because of what I've seen. Here's one, and your doctor won't agree, but here I go. Cysts suck. And when somebody is like, there's a bunch of cysts, let's go ahead with IVF anyway. I'm like, no. Even if the cyst isn't functioning, that means it's not producing estrogen. That's where the science says it's fine to go ahead. I am just telling you, I personally have rarely seen a client that doesn't usually get cysts. Like some people have a cyst that's always there. That's different. But they don't usually get cysts, and then they get a cyst and they move forward with the cycle. I have never seen that cycle turn out as well as the cycle without the cyst. Never. I have never. I might be seeing weird cases, but I have never. So I just say, wait one cycle. Just give me just one period. Ovulate it out. Ovulate out those cysts. Take a trigger shot. Get them out. And then, and by the way, ask for the medication that doesn't make you get cysts. There are some medications that make you more prone to cysts. Don't take that medication, and then move forward with a cycle. So just let the cysts resolve, especially if it's not usual. There's no need to rush ahead. That goes back to like not giving your body a second, not waiting. No need to rush ahead. Just give it another month. All right, this is also not reasonable to me, which is monitoring isn't needed, before the trigger or much at all. I think it is. I think monitoring is needed, especially when it comes to the trigger shot. There should be no guessing. You need to know exactly what size the follicles were at the day of the trigger shot. So if you have it, first of all, I've said before in other stuff, if the lead follicles are 14 to 16 millimeters and the lead follicle in the bunch that your doctor plans to make embryos out of, you should go to monitoring daily until the trigger shot. Because those 16s, depending on your medication, could jump 3, 4, 5 millimeters. I've seen it jump in a day. Okay, because towards the end, sometimes these follicles just jump. Usually you expect 2 millimeters per day, depending on the medication, 1 to 2 millimeters per day. Towards the end, like after 9 days of stims, they jump. So you always want to get monitored daily before the trigger shot. So you have a follicle that's 16 and they think they're going for it. Do not go back in 2 days, especially 3. And the other thing that I see is the doctor getting, doing a monitoring report and then be like, okay, tomorrow you're going to trigger. Okay, no. Then tomorrow you need to see me. Because even if they know, I'm going to put that in quotes, that you're going to trigger tomorrow because of the follicle sizes, they don't know. And getting the exact sizes are going to give me, and I hopefully the doctor wants this as well, data for what sizes they were at the trigger shot. How many embryos did you make? I can usually, looking at a monitoring report, figure out this one was probably the embryo. And then we know your ideal size of the follicles at trigger shot to get to embryo. It's data. The more data that I have, the more I don't need to assume when it comes to a client. Like, who doesn't want that? So this is something that's unreasonable that they are okay with assuming, especially when it comes to something as timely and sensitive and exact as the trigger shot. That just isn't reasonable to me. Something that I hear them say that they say is reasonable, that I don't think is reasonable, is that the follicles disappeared. Okay? It's not funny. It's hard. I'm laughing because I just can't sometimes. But I'll be checking so this is what I want you to do. Because if you're not working with me, this is what I need you to do. You are writing down, you are keeping a chart of all of your follicles, the sizes, the count, everything, okay? The medication dosing that you're taking and what follicles and sizes. And then every monitoring appointment, you should be able to directly associate, oh, this 14 became this 16, this 10 became this 12, this 8 became this 10, like something like that, depending on how many days and whatever. If all of a sudden there are missing follicles, you should have your chart with you at the monitoring report and being like, where did they go? Often, honestly, there are kind of BS reasons. Here is an unreasonable answer. I don't know. Or, oh, there are some follicles that don't grow eggs. But they did grow an egg. It was there. It's just not there now, right? Or if at the egg retrieval, all of a sudden, you're tracking 10 follicles in the ideal size, right? Because sometimes they don't even count the ones that stay small. And then all of a sudden, you get 6 eggs retrieved. What happened to the 4? Oh, I don't know. No, that's not reasonable. What happened to the 4? Here's some clues. If your follicles were 21, 22, 23, 24 millimeters, they may have ovulated out. If your estrogen dropped, that's a sign that they ovulated out. It's just not reasonable to me that they just disappear into thin air. And it shouldn't be reasonable to you either. This goes along with the no monitoring like before a trigger shot, which is, I get this a lot, but no monitoring your progesterone after the transfer. How a progesterone supports a pregnancy. How do we know you have enough estrogen to support a pregnancy if we're never checking for it? I don't know. So when I have a client who has a pregnancy or had a pregnancy loss in the past, and I'm looking at all of her reports, and I see that the progesterone was super low, right before the pregnancy loss, and I ask, well, what was it a week after the transfer? Oh, I don't know. They never checked. Oh, well, what was it like the day of the transfer? Oh, I don't know. They never checked. Oh, again, data allows us information to know what to do for next steps. It's good to know, does your progesterone naturally drop? If so, you may need more progesterone support. Okay, so little things like that just don't feel reasonable to me. Another one is that a saline ultrasound is the only check they'll do of your uterus after you've had multiple failed transfers or multiple chemicals for losses. A saline ultrasound is an image outside of the uterus. A hysteroscopy, on the other hand, is an image inside the uterus. It's an actual camera. How could an outside image be more accurate than an inside image? And this is where when it's rare that a doctor refuses a hysteroscopy, but depending on the country and depending on, please, some countries are like, okay, you get a hysteroscopy in like 6 months. You know what country you are. 6 to 9 months. You're like, and then we give reasons for why they need it. And then you usually get it much sooner. But it's not reasonable that a saline ultrasound could ever be more accurate than a hysteroscopy. And if we're really looking for something as subtle as scar tissue or even hydrocele, which is water around the fallopian tubes, a hysteroscopy is going to pick it up a lot faster and easier. And something like a saline ultrasound, it depends on the equipment, it depends on who's doing it. It's just not reasonable to say you don't need a hysteroscopy when you've never been pregnant for no reason, put that in quotes. You've had multiple losses, or you're never getting pregnant especially with normal embryos or any embryo. Okay, this is one that it kind of goes back to, how do I know I'm ready for another egg retrieval? Because it's like, oh, you're old, go. The data. I've had it where my clients have the data and the data sucks this month. Their FSH is so high all of a sudden. Their AMH is tanked all of a sudden. There's like hardly any follicles. And then the doctor's like, so let's just go forward with IVF. Well, that's not reasonable. Your hormone levels tanking and very different than what they have been 1, 2, 3, 4 months ago is a sign that something is off, and you should probably wait to move forward with something as costly as IVF. So I just had this happen, and I was like, first of all, is your AMH correct? Because depending on how long the sample sits there, and there's human error. I don't know if it's correct. Well, how could it cut in half in a month? How could your FSH skyrocket in a month? Is it accurate? So we just decided, let's at least get another month of data before moving forward. But in the meantime, the reason why your AMH may have tanked is because of XYZ. I knew what it could have been with the client. We need to recover. You are in a state of depletion. We need to recover, right? So again, I get it. The doctor's like, oh my gosh, you're literally losing every egg. That's not reasonable. It's just a month and it's off. Let's see if it's still like that next month, the month after. Because there always could be a little bit of fluctuation, but it is not reasonable. It's reasonable to know there's fluctuation. It's not reasonable to then go, oh, so let's start when all of your hormone levels are at their worst. Another one is when you get an egg retrieval and then the clinic's like 2 weeks later, we're going to start meds. And another one is called like a dual stim or just like back to back or whatever. But we don't have the results of the first one. Like, that's not reasonable to say yes to another egg retrieval. Like, they don't discount you for another egg retrieval. You're paying in full. Did that last egg retrieval work? It is unreasonable to move forward with another egg retrieval when we don't have the results of the last one. We need to learn from the first results to make changes. Whenever I hear that, I'm like, this is definitely a one-size-fits-none protocol, because they have no intention of making changes because they don't even know what the results are, and they know they're going to move forward with the same protocol. Here's another one that I find very unreasonable, which is you have endometriosis, but here are all these protocols with estrogen. Oh, but we took out the endometriosis, so you're fine. Okay, first of all, why do you have endometriosis? Are you now doing the why will help you avoid it growing back, right? So that's the first part. And then secondly, there are so many protocols that you can do that do not need to include estrogen. I don't care if this is an egg retrieval and you're priming. I don't care if this is a FET or frozen embryo transfer and you have thin lining. There are always protocols that don't include estrogen. So it is not reasonable for your doctor to just give you a protocol with estrogen when you have endometriosis. Think about it this way. If endometriosis is fire, estrogen is lighter fluid. It enhances the flame, making it harder for an embryo, potentially harder for an embryo to implant because of the high amounts of inflammation. So if you have endometriosis or had it, and if they say things like, well, we took it all out, so it's not there, first of all, it could grow back. Ask them, tell me all the protocols that you can do without estrogen. And if they have to have answers. Here are some quick ones because I've done podcasts about this before, but totally unreasonable to me is clinics that are not open every day of the week. I can't, it's literally, I don't even know where to start with this, but it just, your body doesn't pause because it's Sunday. You've got to get monitored. I can't believe how many missed monitoring appointments that mess up cycles or missed the appropriate trigger day because your egg retrieval would have fallen over a Friday or a Saturday or Sunday. And of course, they're not discounting these cycles. That is highly unreasonable. Don't ever go to a clinic that is not open for procedures and monitoring every single day. Just don't. They have to compromise your success for their schedule. Another one is batching everyone and making them on the same cycle. That is not reasonable because once again, that is not going to be the protocol that gives you your most optimal outcome. It can't. Birth control is the way to control cycles. Some of you should not be on birth control. Many of you should not be on birth control, but that's the only way to batch clients, batch patients. So if that is happening, you are compromising IVF, your successful IVF, because they want to schedule. If your client, ask them, do you batch clients? If they do, move on. And this last one, it's too many clinics that it's just so unreasonable, is no communication with the doctor, whether it's after they sell you on the clinic or just once there's movement, there's no communication. I mean, this is insane to me. Or even worse, they're like, yeah, you can have a call. It's going to be in 2 weeks and you need to pay me $200. Like, F you. Are you kidding me? I just paid you 20 grand. And now I have your freaking nurse answering these questions. Or is this reasonable? And the answer is no. It is not reasonable that they will take your money, but they will not take your calls. IVF is a very complicated, specific science. There are questions during it. There are clarity questions that need to happen. I can't tell you how many times I answer my clients' questions and they literally don't know what to do. So obviously they have me. We can't have that. We can't only have people that have someone like me get their questions answered. This is insane. So you need to talk to the doctor. And I have all this on a sheet. If you guys ever want questions to discuss with your doctor, just email support@tashablasi.com, tasha@tashablasi.com. I can send it to you. But we have questions like, how do I communicate with you? And if the answer is kind of like you don't, I'm sorry, but I think you need to find another clinic. All right, another one is we want quality over quantity. I mean, of course we want quality, but if you have a lot of follicles and you're only getting a couple embryos, that means that the protocol stunk and they're growing at all different rates and they're not growing evenly. So by the time you trigger, there's only a couple follicles in that ideal range that could ever become embryos. Typically, there are the follicles that are 16 to 19 millimeters that grew in 10 to 12 days. Okay, we've heard this before. You've heard it from me before. So like this whole idea of like, oh, we're going for quality. Well, of course we are, but like I have a 50% like drop rate at every stage. That's not success. That's uneven growth. And that can be fixed with the right protocol and the right execution of the protocol. All right. And then these last two I'll just put together, which is, you are on the bad end of the statistics, or you're unlucky, or it's just a numbers game. This is not Vegas. This is your body, your time, your money, your egg reserve, your future children. We need strategy. We need an individualized strategic plan for you to get and stay pregnant. That's what leads to success. Not like throwing the dice and seeing where it lands. That is a terrible game. Well, it's a great game for everyone else involved except for the patient. Overall, if your plan isn't changing, why would your outcome change? You deserve a plan that makes sense. You deserve communication and a doctor, and they're out there. Oh my gosh, they are out there. A doctor who cares about your success and wants to see you succeed and is open to communications and questions because they know your clarity will bring you more confidence. So ask the questions, ask for the data and numbers, follow the logic. And if it doesn't add up, if it's not reasonable, it's not reasonable. And that's not you. There's nothing wrong with you. You're an intelligent, brilliant, wonderful person. If it's not reasonable to you, it's because it's not reasonable and you should not accept it. So let's stop normalizing the unreasonable when it comes to IVF. Let's stop mistaking common for totally acceptable. And let's stop being afraid to say, this doesn't make sense to me, or this isn't reasonable, or this doesn't sit right with me. And be more a part of the conversation, something that aligns with how you feel, something that makes sense. Your fertility plan should be as brilliant, smart, and aligned as you are. And don't settle for anything less, mama. Well, that was our uncovering for the day. If you have a feeling that your IVF protocols or strategies could use a second opinion, start with our website, tashablasi.com, for resources and even a free discovery call where we can learn about your specific IVF needs and see how we can help.